So I was getting things wrapped up. And Dustmorn, I didn't get to play as much. I had a slideshow ready for Dustmorn, and actually probably would have been the most helpful set of last year to do because it was complicated, to say the least. But didn't end up getting to make that video. And then Foundations, I was very busy during, so I didn't even really look at. I did draft a lot of Foundations, had a blast with it. I thought it was super refreshing. Dustmorn was equally awesome, but in a totally different way. So here we are. We're back. We're with Aetherdrift, and just to give you my take on it, just so you know where I'm coming from. I am not super excited for this set, if I'm not going to lie. This one looks a little, shoehorned, let's just say. I just think the vehicle stuff and the racing is, oh, look, it's Mario Kart, Wow, how cool. So, take that with a grain of salt. Everything I say, if I have a little tinge of, I don't like this thing, that's probably just because of my bias. So ignore that. If you're excited for Aetherdrift, I am very happy for you. I hope that this set provides everything that you're looking for. But we are here. We're back with a limited strategy guide for Aetherdrift. I'm going to be breaking down what you're going to see in this set, some mechanics, just for players who may not know what they are yet, breaking down every archetype so you know what to look for in a deck. And then I have some early rankings. These are very early, so don't put too much faith in them. And then I also wanted to provide just a source that you can go to see all the tricks or instant spells that you might encounter when you're at a pre-release or at your first draft. So let's get started. So first up, I just always want to start with this. What are you going to see in packs? We've seen packs have changed very drastically over the last year. So 6 to 7 commons, 3 uncommons. That's pretty standard. I mean, we used to have more commons, but they're going down on those. And sets generally have more uncommons than commons now, which I think is kind of weird, but I guess design-wise it makes sense, apparently. Then you have your wild cards. You've got 2 wild cards per pack. One's foil, one's non-foil. Most of the time, these are going to be commons or uncommons, so just expect that. And then you have 1 rare or mythic, and then your 1 land card. So, I mean, I don't think this is that much different than what we saw in Bloomburrow. So, pretty standard in terms of play boosters. But once again, these could change, so I just want to, give you what you will find in Aetherdrift. Moving forward, let's look at our new mechanics. What are we going to see in here? And this one is probably the most important one that you're going to run into. This is start your engines. My son loves saying this. It's hilarious. He just screams it at the top of his lungs. So what is start your engines? Basically, we're going to see this emblem right in the middle here. This is going to reflect your speed in game. So anytime you play a card that has start your engines on it, you will gain a speed, right? So you'll get this emblem and you'll have 1 speed. And this speed cannot go down. There's only, I think, 1 effect that brings it down in the entire set. So don't worry about that. But basically, when you deal damage to an opponent on your turn, that will increase your speed by 1. Now, this can be by creatures attacking, and hitting your opponent, or this can be from draining their life or pinging them. There's ways that any way that you can get them to lose life on your turn, that will increase your speed. Your speed is capped at 4. So once you hit 4, you are at max speed, which is what most of the cards in this set are going to care about. There are a few that care about, different levels of speed, but for the most part, you're trying to get to 4, and that's it. So just for some examples, Pride of the Road, 4 mana, 2/5 vigilance, has start your engines. So once again, when you play this card, your speed will go up to 1. If you already have speed of 1, then that doesn't actually do anything, just to be clear. And then once you hit max speed, once you get up to that 4th level, then this thing gives double strike to a creature every turn. So limited wise, that's a pretty good card. Then you got your standard 2 mana artifact. That's colorless. That sucks in the set, but it has a mechanic on it. So it's 2 mana, 2/1, start your engines, max speed. It's a 3/3. Yeah, pretty. I mean, don't play that card if you can help it. It's bad. So that's one of the mechanics. The other mechanic in the set, the other new mechanic, is exhaust. So we've seen effects like this before. Basically, exhaust are just abilities stapled onto creatures that are one-time use. and they do something. So, for example, Prow Catcher Specialist is a goblin that exhausts. You have to pay 4 mana, and you put 2 counters on it. This card looks pretty good, actually, I will say, but that's neither here nor there. Exhaust is just going to be basically in your red teamer colors. It's going to be big effects that change your creatures from a 4/4 to a 7/7 or whatever. It might have a draw a bunch of cards effects. You'll see as you kind of open packs and whatnot what exhaust is. But those are our 2 new mechanics. But the big returning mechanics, and the number one is vehicles. Obviously, this set is themed around a big death race, basically, and the vehicles are a big part of that. So if you don't know, vehicles are artifacts. So when you play them, they are not creatures. They don't do anything. They just are artifacts. And if you want them to be a creature, you have to crew them. And so every vehicle will have crew and a number. That number is how much power you have to basically spend in order to make this a creature for a turn. So if I have for the Midnight Mangler, if I have a 2-power creature on the battlefield, I can tap that creature and make this a creature for that turn. Notably, this is only 1 turn, so once the turn ends, your creature will still be tapped, and the artifact will now be an artifact again. The vehicle will now be an artifact again. So, it's a mechanic that inherently makes you want to be more aggressive because you're not going to have as many blockers. And also it what was the other word for it? Well, now I'm blanking. I know we're live, but yeah, it is an artifact creature. I had something else to say, man. See, sometimes when you don't write your script out, you lose some things. But yeah, this card specifically becomes an artifact creature on other turns. So basically, this vehicle animates when it's not your turn, but you can also choose to animate it on your turn. So yeah, those are vehicles. I'll just go ahead and say, if you never played with vehicles before, you need to be careful about how you play with these, because if you jam pack your deck full of vehicles, then you're not going to have anything to crew them with, and then you won't do anything. So be careful with that. Remember, basically every vehicle should be valued lower than any creature, because it's going to have statistics that look good and sound good, but they're not creatures. And you have to remember that every time you're thinking about building decks with vehicles in them, which you will be doing because this set is jam-packed full of them. Then we also have mounts and saddling. So this is very similar to vehicles. We saw this in Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Basically, a mount is a vehicle that is a creature without needing to be, crewed. Instead of crewing it, you saddle it. So this lizard mount is a creature. It's a 2-mana 2/1 with Death Touch. But whenever you saddle it, whenever you tap something with 2 power or more, it becomes saddled. Now it's a 2/4 for the rest of the turn. So they're very similar, but just by and large, mounts are better than vehicles. Like if you're just valuing them at base rate, if I have this card and one's a vehicle and one's a mount, the mount is better because the mount's already a creature. It's already on the battlefield. It's already affecting things. And, typically in limited, you're going to want to play on the battlefield. You want to basically have more creatures or better creatures than your opponent does. A lot of limited comes down to that. And so I typically will overvalue mounts and undervalue vehicles. And I think that's, sometimes it could be a mistake, but generally that's how you want to do it. So yeah, mounts and saddling, they're back. And then you have cycling. This is an old ability. I've seen it several times. Basically, it's a buyout. So this is a 1-mana instant that gives +2/+2. But let's say you're in the late game and this +2/+2 ability is not going to help you anymore. You can just decide to spend 2 mana, discard this, and draw a new card, which is going to be important. There's a lot of discard effects, like you wanting to discard things to get benefits. So be aware of that. There's going to be things that you get to trigger because you're cycling. Mostly in blue-red, but there are some others as well. Cycling's awesome. So I would say whenever you see a card with cycling, you should automatically, if you're scaling cards on a scale of 1 to 10 of how much you want to play it, just uptick it by 1 just because it has cycling. Because, there's times in limited, and you know this because you played. I know you. I know you're an expert. I know you know what you're talking about. there'll be times when you're playing limited and you'll draw, a really good card in your deck, but you look at the board and it does nothing. So you just you need something else so you can cycle it away and get a new card, something hopefully that's better. So yeah, that's cycling, and that's actually all the mechanics. We're looking at a pretty straightforward set, and we'll see this when we get to the instance. There's just this is a very over the board kind of set. So expect that. Don't expect this to be real finicky and it is finicky in one way with all the vehicles, but you're not going to have all of this mind game with your opponent where they have open mana and you're scared of what they could have. In general, in white, there are 3 instants. There's 3 things an opponent can do on your turn if they have white mana open. So it's just generally a much more over the board kind of format. So yeah, cycling is going to be a part of that because people are going to have open mana, and at the end of your turn, they'll cycle away 3 cards and draw 3 more cards or something. But yeah. So getting into our archetypes, this is where we really this is what I love talking about, is looking at the archetypes, understanding them so that when we go into drafts and sealed, we know what we're talking about. So we're starting off in blue-white Azorius. This is the artifact value archetype. So every set or every archetype has 2 uncommons that pretty much tell you what what that archetype wants to do. So for Azorius, we have our 6 mana 6/5 vehicle here with Vigilance. Now, once again, 6 mana 6/5 with Vigilance is a great stat line. I would say unlimited. Vigilance just really, it's it can attack every turn, it can block every turn. But remember, this is a vehicle, all right? So we have to always think about that when we're looking at this kind of stuff. Now, thankfully, this vehicle has, when it ATBs, you search and go find an artifact, and you could put it on the battlefield if its mana value is 2 or less. That's amazing. You could go find a 2-drop artifact creature that can crew your Guidelight Pathmaker. So right away, this thing, at the bare minimum, in your deck, if you're playing this, you should have at least 1 or 2 2-mana artifact creatures that can crew this thing, right? But it can also go find bigger stuff. Especially if you get this rare in your deck, oh my gosh, you go search for the Medicant, put him on the battlefield, and he's probably already huge. I like this card. I think it is, it's a little, it's a vehicle. Once again, I'm always going to value vehicles lower just because of what they are, but this one's really cool. And then you have your other signpost uncommon, 7 mana. So we're looking at, this is some expensive stuff, right? But you got to look down. Affinity for artifacts. So affinity, this is on a few cards, mostly the blue-white cards. Affinity is basically, when you play this spell, you count how many artifacts you have, and then it costs 1 less generic mana. So it can't go below 2, but it can go from anywhere from 7 to 6 to 5, 4, 3, 2, depending on if you've got a lot of artifacts. So clearly, this is your artifact value deck. That's why that's the name. So what does the spell actually do? Draw 3, gain 3. Pretty dang good. If you can get this thing below 5, it's, I would say, worth it. Because it obviously refill your hand, and that gain 3, I mean, it's not insane, but it does help with the spending my mana to not affect the board problem that draw effects have in limited. When you're playing a constructed format, drawing cards is pretty much always a benefit because affecting the board isn't as important. Usually your deck is doing something that allows you to draw the cards and not, hurt too badly. But in limited, we have to spend our mana every turn, and we have to spend it on creatures so that we can kill our opponent. Otherwise, we are dying. You're either, the beatdown, or you are playing the slow game, playing the grind. So this card lets you play the grind without falling behind. So I really like both the uncommons here. And the rare, which, take the rare with a grain of salt. You're not going to see the rare. That's why it's a rare. But this one is so insane, right? So its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. So right away, if you're playing artifacts, and there's a lot of artifact tokens in this set, that's really important. This thing could be huge. And then on top of that, if you're at max speed, because it has the start your engines text on it, every time you cast an artifact, you can pay 1 to copy it. Paying 1 mana to copy an artifact spell is mind-blowingly good. So yeah, this card's crazy. I love it. It's probably one of my top 3 or 4 cards that I want to get in limited and actually play with. So yeah, those are our Azorius signposts. And then I just want to go through, I like to do this because I don't see it that often. What is a good enabler, a good payoff, and one other card that I would highlight for this deck? For the enabler, I think this Voyager Quick Welder is going to be great. 3 mana, 2/4 that makes all your artifacts cheaper. You're playing artifacts. You want to get more of them on the battlefield. That's why it's the value deck. So this guy's going to help you do that. Yeah, and he's going to make your robots all cheap. And then you have your payoff. So your payoff for playing a lot of artifacts is your Memory Guardian. He's your 5 mana, 3/4, but he has affinity. So he could be, if you can play your deck right, you could get this thing to 1 mana. A 1 mana 3/4 flyer is insane. That is such a good rate. And so if you can just, you want to build this deck to where you're getting lots of artifacts, but you also need something to do with those things. So that's why I put the payoff there and this other payoff as well. The Godlight Synergist, he gets +1/+0 for each artifact and he has flying. And so if you get to that 5 artifact, limit, then he's a 4 mana, 5/4 flying. And he could be even higher than that if you get tokens and if you get other stuff. So I just think this deck is going to be very much about like setting up your board and then playing these big bomb level uncommons that really flip the tide for you. And they have flying. This is Azorius. They're the flying people. So yeah, you're gonna see lots of games where you feel like you're doing good, and then the Azorius guy plays 2 of these creatures in one turn, and suddenly you're losing instantly. So watch out for that. Moving on to black-white, this is the max speed attrition deck. So get to max speed, drain your opponent. That's kind of the idea here. So for our signpost, we have start your engines, obviously, on the zombie. Whenever this creature enters, make a 2/2. So 3 mana for a 1/2 and a 2/2. That's fine. Yeah, that's good rate overall. I don't like my signpost having 2 toughness because there's usually, and there is in this set, cards that kill stuff with 2 toughness specifically. So whatever. And then when you get to max speed, whenever creature you control dies, drain for 1. This card's okay. I think it might be a little tough to get there. I don't know. We'll talk about black-white specifically in a little bit. Let's go through the other signposts. You have a X white-black vehicle 3/3. When it NTBs, return target artifact creature card with mana value X less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it raises dead, and it's a vehicle. I would say the vehicle here, isn't that good, right? It's just a 3/3. It doesn't have any abilities on it. It's literally just a 3/3 vehicle that costs a bunch and brings something else back. So, I mean, I don't foresee myself being excited about this card really. I don't know. The rare here is awesome. Once again, he is a rare though. So 2 mana, 3/2, start your engines, sacrifice to surveil. That's pretty good. Only once per turn though. And then max speed, whenever a non-token dies, make a 2/2. I mean, these are all really good abilities. So if you get the rare, I mean, I would try the deck out. But what we're looking at here is basically you want to get to max speed. So you have to play creatures to attack your opponent to get that speed. But then after that, you're kind of playing this once you get max speed, you're playing this real go wide. I have a bunch of creatures and I'm going to trade away everything and you're going to die because I'm draining you. That's kind of the idea here. I'll go ahead and say, unfortunately, I don't think this deck is very good. I think it's trying to do too much. You've got sack synergies. You've got aggression synergies. You've got, life gain and triggers and stuff. So it's just trying to do a lot. And you have this raise dead stuff, reanimate ideas. So you got 4 different directions this deck is going. I don't know. I'd have to this is the kind of deck I need to play with to see if it's actually any good. But as of right now, I don't think it is. For an enabler, I just wanted to put a cheap start your engines creature that can get in, that has some evasion. So this 2 mana 2/2 has start your engines, and on your turn it has first strike. So you're going to get to play this on turn 2, get to speed 1, and then turn 3, you should be able to realistically attack with this, and your opponent can't block. Unless they want to throw a creature away, which you're happy with. And then on top of that, when you get to max speed, then you get to draw a card with this when it's in your graveyard. So I think that's a great enabler for this deck. And then you have payoff. I struggle to find a common. I like to do common payoffs and common enablers just so we can see like what we should have access to at the very least. So this is a flying haste 3/3, which is not a terrible stat line. And usually this creature in limited can't block. So in this case it can. I like this. That stat line's fine. It has start your engines, and then it has lifelink at max speed. So hopefully you've already hit max speed at turn 5. But like playing this and it's swinging for 3 in the air with lifelink is pretty sweet. So that's a good payoff, I think. And then one other card is another 5 mana card with start your engines. But this time, every turn you get a 2/2. That is a really good ability. And the 2/2 comes in untapped, so you can automatically block with it, trade it away, get that life or that drain trigger. So I think if any card here is worth talking about, it is this Risen Necro Regent. But we'll see about this deck. I feel like I say that for Azorius like all the time. Like we'll see how it plays in limited, because it's just they always try to do some weird stuff in Orzhov. I feel like, but yeah, that's Orzhov. Boros, vehicle mount aggro. So we're gonna have a few vehicle specific decks, and this is one of them. This is the most aggressive one you're gonna see. So for our signposts, we have a vehicle, obviously. I think do we have a vehicle in every, there's a vehicle in Orzhov, vehicle here, and a vehicle in Boros. I think there might be a vehicle in all of them. So a 4 mana 2/3 with flying. That's an okay vehicle. Crew for 1 is really important. You want to have cheap crews on your vehicles. Anything above 2 is hard to swallow, because you're tapping real creatures. Like you're tapping creatures that you want to be blocking with. So when it ETBs, distribute 2 counters. Yeah, I mean, this card's fine. I think it's a little among 1 or 2 other target vehicles. So you can't put the counters on itself. Among 1 or 2 other target vehicles, yeah. That kind of sucks. So you have to have 2 other things when you play this. And, I mean, in Limited, if you've played enough Limited, you know that's not always the case. So, I don't know. I'm not high on this one. 4 mana 2/3 with flying is pretty low on the rate scale. And yeah, not being able to put it on itself is pretty bad. So we'll see. Not super high there. You have your other one, 2 mana 3/1, ETB Scry 2. Tap to make X pilot tokens. Pilots are basically 1/1s that crew for 3 at least. So they're pretty good. They're gonna crew almost everything in the set. So make a bunch of those equal to the number of vehicles or mounts that enter the battlefield. So basically, every time you play a vehicle, you're going to get a crew. You're going to get a creature that can crew it as well, which is really good. So basically, if you have this guy on the battlefield, you can start to think about your creatures as if or your vehicles as if they were creatures, because they have that pilot coming with them. This is a great one. This one can make the archetype. The other one I think is pretty mid, but this one's pretty sweet. And then your rare is absolutely busted. 2 mana 2/3. Every mountain vehicle has haste, and then when you play one of those, they automatically are mounted, or they're already saddled or creatures if they're vehicles. That guy's crazy. If you get him, commit. All right, try it out. Just see what it does. I really like this card in Limited. I think it'll be really fun to play with. For our enablers and payoffs, the enabler is the interface ace. Basically, it can crew twice a turn. So, playing a lot of vehicles, you're going to want to have a lot of things to crew with. And this guy can basically give you a 2-for-1. So it's really sweet. And I think, honestly, any deck that wants to play mounts and vehicles and is white wants this card. So if you're drafting and you know that you're going to be drafting vehicles, maybe take this card somewhat earlier. Now, it's a common, so don't first pick it if you can help it. But yeah, it's a good card, so take it. Payoff, this is not a great payoff, but it's the only one I could really find. I found a big vehicle that has Menace. So it crews for 3. Crew for 3 is terrible, but if you have those pilot tokens, then you should be able to crew it easily. And the cycling here is nice. Being able to get rid of this, if you don't want it, because you have no creatures, is nice. It only cycles for 1. So I think this card is fine. But once again, you do have to have something to crew it with, so be aware of that. Your other notable card here. This card is 5-mana 5/4 creature or vehicle with haste. All right. So once again, this isn't a creature; it's a vehicle, but it has the exhaust ability. Tap another untapped mount or vehicle. So if you have like one vehicle, like let's say you have the Clamorous Ironclad on the battlefield, you can't crew it. Well, play the Mech Cycle, tap the Ironclad, and the Mech Cycle becomes an artifact creature. It's permanent. So now it's a creature forever. And then you put a counter on it for each mount or vehicle you control. So if you've been building up these mounts and vehicles over the course of the game up until this point, and you slam this guy down, he could be a huge haster. And he could, yeah, I think this card's really, really good. Boros to me, like it's aggressive, right? That's always Boros' thing. It's aggressive, usually go wide. I'm not high on it. I will just let you know. To me, vehicles are by nature not aggressive. You have to have that and another thing. So if you need two things, then it's going to take you longer to get them. So therefore, you can't attack as much. I don't trust this deck yet. This deck is going to have to prove itself when I see it in draft to really get me higher on it. But I mean, there are pieces that I like, so we'll see. That's Boros moving to Selesnya. And actually, it's kind of funny. This is pretty much the same archetype we saw in Outlaws. It's mounts. And it says vehicle and mounts. I just think of mounts when I think of green-white, and most of them are mounts. So you got your 2-mana 1/1 flying. When it attacks while saddled, put 2 counters out. They have to be on different things. This card's so good. This is a flyer that's going to get bigger every turn. It's going to put counters out, so it makes other things bigger every turn. It saddles for 1, so it's like stupid easy to do. This card's really, really, really good. Do not sleep on this card. And I promise you, at one point in this draft, you're going to die because this thing is a 5/5, and it's just hitting you every turn. And it's going to make the rest of their board bigger, so you can't attack them back. So watch out for this thing. Thing's nasty. And then you got your 3-mana 3/4. Beginning of your instep, untap every creature you control. So if you're playing vehicles, if you're playing other stuff, you're going to get to use the tap ability twice. Or like, let's say you mount your Lagoran Soul of Alacria, then whatever you mounted it with is going to get to untap, so it can now block. This is a great card, and then it has that 4-mana +1/+1 ability. Awesome. Just a really good, solid uncommon. Like, this is exactly what a signpost should be. It's just, it helps you do your thing, and it gives you an ability, and that's it. Your rare is a 4-mana 4/2. Go tutor for a mount or vehicle. So, if you've got that bomb, then you can go get it. And then basically it has hardened scales for your mounts and vehicles. It adds an additional counter. So, I mean, think of Lagoran and Caradora working together. It's ridiculous. If you get this rare, you're gonna have a good time if you can get some of these other signposts to go with it. For your enabler, I wanted to highlight these cards because I think they're awesome. They're just generic creatures, and that's just amazing. You got your 2-mana 3/2. So the reason I put this in here, you're gonna want to mount things, and this is a cheap way to do that. It's 2 mana, and it gives you 3 power to mount with, and you don't feel bad about really crewing or whatever, saddling a creature, because it's a generic 3/2. Like, it doesn't do much other than do that. So I put it there because it's cheap. It's also eating a car, which is nice. And then your payoff, this is the biggest, baddest, meanest mount that I could find. 6-mana 5/5. ETB, make a 3/3. That's already insane. So 6 mana, you're getting a 3/3 and a 5/5, so 8 power, 8 toughness. That's an amazing rate. Then you can saddle this thing up. Now it's saddle 5. That's why it's a payoff, because you need to have the stuff in place for it. But you get a 3/3 every turn if you attack with this thing. So yeah, just like the definition of an awesome payoff. If you can get it to work, it's gonna be nasty. And then your notable card. This card is stupid. This card makes me kind of angry that it's even in the set, because I know it's gonna ruin my day. 2-mana 2/3 with lifelink. When it's attacks while saddled, go get a plains and put it in your hand. So just draw cards. I don't know if you've ever played limited with no lands in your library left. Like if you can get out, I did this a lot in Dustmourne with threats around every corner. It's an enchantment that every time you manifest, you go get a land. So there would be several games where, you know, halfway through, I would have all my lands out. The knowing that, you feel like, I don't know, Professor X, because you know for a fact that every card in there is going to affect this game. Whereas a normal limited, when I go to draw a card, especially in paper, this doesn't happen as much in arena because it just auto draws for you. But whenever I go to draw that card, my hand is always like shaking a little bit because I'm worried that it's a land. And when you flip it over and it's a land, your heart just sinks. So whenever you have that knowledge that there are no lands left in there, you can just draw confidently, and it, you know, you just feel your back get straight, you know. So this card is, yeah, it's disgusting. I've talked way too much about this, but yeah, I think this deck's gonna be awesome. So be scared, be ready for this deck to be great. Okay, blue-black Dimir, Artifact Bleeder, really interesting archetype we have here. I'm gonna start with the middle uncommon because I think the other one's cooler. Haunted Hellride, 3-mana, 3/3. Whenever you attack, target creature gets +1/+1, gains Death Touch. I don't know why this is the uncommon for this archetype. Like, it doesn't really synergize a lot with other stuff, but I think the point is, it lets you get damage through, so you can, like, basically this deck wants to bleed out your opponent, and this card lets you set up a realistic board state that lets you bleed out. Because, I mean, there's almost no world in which you, in limited, never attack your opponent and win the game by dealing them damage based off your cards. So this card's going to let you attack more and get those Death Touch creatures through. And that's, I think, the point here. It's just kind of weird. But notably, this is a good vehicle because it doesn't say whenever this creature attacks. It says whenever you attack. So you get to do this ability with whatever creature you want, all your 1/1s or whatever. So this card's pretty good. I like this one a lot. It's way better than the, which one was it? The Dune Drifter. The Dune Drifter is pretty cheeks, if you ask me. But yeah, now this other uncommon, this thing it's tickling the jollies, if you know what I mean. 5 mana, choose target opponent. You make 2 artifact tokens with flying. So that's pretty great. Then the chosen player loses life, and you gain life. So you drain your opponent for the number of artifacts you control. So right here, you have your win condition, right? Get enough artifacts, deal 13 damage, gain 13. Like you could get to that. Now, that's not like crazy likely or anything, but like that's the dream I'm having, is like I play my stuff, I set up my board, then I slam this card on the table and drain them for, 20 life. That would be ultimate awesomeness. But I think this card's going to be really good. And the 2/1/1s aren't anything to scoff at. They have flying, and so you're going to be able to push those through, possibly, depending on what they have. And if you're playing these in conjunction, those are 2/1 death touchers with flying. So look for this card to be pretty nasty. Now, you do have to have the right deck for this. If your deck is not built for this kind of thing, then it's going to fail, and you're going to feel bad about it. So set up for this. This is going to take a lot of setup. You're going to want to be playing a heavy control setup, which Dimir is built for. But yeah, you want your deck to be right for this card. And then your rare Winter, dope art. The dude's riding the thing, and he's got a dragon or demon or whatever. 3/2 for 2. He's got ward pay 2. Artifacts have ward pay 2. In limited that can stack up, but for the most part, if they kill Winter first, then the ward doesn't matter. And then you can exhaust it, pay 4, tap them. So remember, exhaust is one-time use. Exile X artifacts from your graveyard, and then basically kill everything in the battlefield. And this is non-artifact creature. So if you were playing all artifact creatures, then you could wipe. It could be a one-sided board wipe. Now especially in this set, it's unlikely. So I don't know. Winter's fine. Like, he's not one of the cooler legendaries to me, but he's got some things going for him. For your enabler, I just picked the 2 mana 1/3 flying. So what this card is it's a cheap creature with high toughness and evasion, and it's an artifact. That's why those are the 4 things I was looking for. I needed something cheap that has good toughness and is an artifact. This was the thing. This is you're going to get to play this on turn 2. So you put an artifact into play, which is what you want to be doing. But also, it's going to let you block. That's the biggest thing, right? Because this deck is going to need to, stall. This is what Dimir is about. Stall the time. Like, let the game run on, right? This creature is going to block all their 2/2s from getting to you. Because, in limited, aggro decks are kind of built upon this idea that if I can get in some early damage, if I can get you down to 10 life, right? Then when I attack with all my creatures and you have stuff that's going, if I'm attacking with my 6 creatures, I know some are going to die. But I'm getting enough damage through that over the course of the next 3 turns, doesn't matter how you block. I'm going to kill you. And so what this thing does is it stops that early damage from happening. So that way, later in the game, whenever you have 3 creatures and they have 6, they can't attack you because they're going to lose 3 creatures or whatever. And they're not going to deal enough damage to actually threaten you. So I love this card. I think this is great for this deck. Now, this card itself is not crazy good or anything, but it is a common. It also has Surveil too, so you're going to get to look at your next few cards and kind of decide whether or not those are going to help you. So that's great. Your payoff here, 4 mana, 3/4. So by itself, not a great body, but it continues that bleeder idea. Whenever this or another artifact you control ETBs, drain for 1. So this is going to help you set up that more drainy stuff. And once again, it's also an artifact. So all of this stuff is you really want to be super synergizing here. And then for the notable card, there are lots of stuff that could go here, but I like the Hull Drifter because it's exactly what Dimir wants to do. It's make a little vehicle thing, make an artifact, draw 2 cards, so refill your hand. And it could trade off without feeling too bad. Like if they attack with their 3 power creature, I can tap my Packdoll Terror. I don't want to lose this thing, so I block with the Hull Drifter. And now I didn't really lose a creature because it's just a vehicle, So, I think Dimir, I always love Dimir. Probably my favorite color combo. Maybe second favorite. But this one looks especially interesting because I like setting up in limited. I like the idea of getting things going and then watching it, kill my opponent rather than just stompy, which is also fun sometimes. But, yeah. Next, we have Is It, which is probably my favorite color combo. This one's interesting. This is discard aggro. So, usually Is It, we see kind of 2 ideas in Is It. It's like burn, kind of stuff or whatever, deal damage to your opponent by spells and whatnot. Or it's like drawing extra cards every turn, which this is pretty much that, but in a different way. So this one's all about basically looting. Or rummaging, I guess is the right term. You discard a card, draw a card. So you have your uncommon 3 mana instant, deal 5 to a target creature or planeswalker, draw a card, discard a card. So you're going to see that all the time on these cards. Your other uncommon 3 mana 3/3 vehicle with menace, that's fine. Whenever you attack, draw and discard. Now that has that really good text on it that doesn't say whenever this attacks, but whenever you attack. So if you have this on the battlefield, even though it's not a creature, it's going to let you keep drawing and discarding cards, which is what this deck wants to do. So both of these are very good for this archetype. I think they're going to play really, really well. Your rare here, this guy's nasty. 3 mana 3/3 with haste. Vehicles have haste whenever you attack. If a pirate and a vehicle attack this combat, so you do have to have both. Draw 3, then discard 2. Pretty busted. Pretty nice card here. So what is this deck about, really? You want to be discarding and drawing cards because there's things that are going to pay you off for that. Your enabler here, I put the Howler's Heavy. He's a 4 mana 3/4, and that's it, pretty much. So don't play this card unless you're in this archetype. And even then, I put this in because it's one of the few cards that has a cycling ability. Not all of them do. So just be aware of that. This one has cycling for 2, so you're going to be able to discard and draw. That's what the deck wants to do. But then it also has on top of it, whenever you cycle it, a creature gets -3 mana. So you get to trick your opponent while also triggering your stuff. Could be a cool card. Don't play that many of these. It's not a great card, I will say, but I just thought it was cool. Your payoff for the deck, Magmakin Artillerist. This is just at common. Remember, I'm only doing common ones. There are better ones at common and uncommon at uncommon for enablers and payoffs, but I wanted to start with these. And then this one says whenever you discard one of our cards, so whenever you're doing the thing you want to do, this creature deals that much damage to the opponent. So you're going to get to, burn your opponent out slowly with this thing. And he also has cycling, so he's going to get to do the thing. He deals damage whenever you cycle him. He's a great payoff. And he's at common, so you can get more than one of these in your deck, hopefully. And now, notable card. This was a tie between two different cards, but they have the same text. This one is the flying version. There's a 1-mana red version of this. But basically, it has this ability. Whenever you discard one of our cards, put that many +1/+1 counters. Neither of the creatures are capped. So you want these cards. Like, these are going to be the linchpins to this deck. Is getting these cards that grow, and especially this flying one. Like, you play this guy, and you start drawing and discarding, this thing's going to get big quick, and your opponents are going to it's a must-answer threat. Once this thing hits 3-4 power in the air, that's really dangerous. And based off what I've seen with this deck, it can get a lot bigger. So, yeah, love this one. Really excited to see how this deck plays. Because Izzet has kind of sucked for a little bit. So, moving on to Simic. Simic is a ramp deck, all about exhausting. So, 3-mana, 3/5 vehicle, vigilance, crew for 1, which is awesome. Whenever you exhaust at all, make a 1/1 flying creature token. That's pretty good. I like that. That's a good vehicle. And then you have your Serpent. 2-mana, 1/1 flying death touch. That's pretty sweet. Exhaust for 4. Reveal cards from the top of your library till you get 2 lands. Put them on the battlefield tapped. And then put a counter on this. That's a great exhaust ability. And the good thing about this one is it's not a card itself, right? If that was a card, 4 mana, get 2 lands, put them on the battlefield, put a counter on a creature. In limited, that card would suck. But because this is already a creature, it's actually not that bad. So I like this card. I like the uncommons for this deck. That doesn't mean I like the deck, but I like the uncommons. And then you have Vita Sarma, Master Racer. 2-mana, 2/3 with the exhaust. Put a bunch of counters on this thing. And then basically every creature you have becomes as big as Sita is. It's a pretty good ability. It's a rare, so you probably won't have to deal with it that much. Yeah, it's fine. For our enabler, I just put the blue tap thing because it ramps you. It lets you do your exhaust abilities. It's probably not going to be a super great card, but probably one you might want for this deck. And then your payoff, Greenbelt Guardian is nasty. 2-mana, 2/2 gives things trample, which if you're playing big creatures, which this deck probably wants to do, is really good. And then it has that exhaust ability. Put 3 counters on this, so it becomes a 5/5 later in the game. That's a great card. It's going to really help this deck out. And then I put in Elvish Refueler as our notable card. It's going to let you double up on your exhaust, and even you can do more if you have enough turns, which you probably won't. But basically, exhaust is one-time abilities, but this makes it to where you can do it more than once. And it has the ability to put counter on itself. So it's a pretty sweet card. I think it's a really fun one to try and work out. Overall, I think Simic is once again not great. Ramping and limited is just not like a winning strategy because you can get tons of mana and that's good and dandy. But if that's what your deck is trying to do, then you're not doing anything really important. Now, I was talking earlier about getting lands out of your deck, and obviously you are going to be kind of ramping when you do that, but that's not the goal. The goal is to, with the mount deck, the goal is to push through your mounts, get counters on everything, make your creatures bigger so that you can kill your opponent. That's a winning strategy. This is get more lands on the battlefield and exhaust things, but exhaust doesn't, exhaust can or can't do anything depending on how the game goes. It just seems like a lot more like the deck can fail. This deck seems like it's open to failure more than others are. So that's Simic. Moving down to Rakdos. Rakdos is, once again, I think the best aggressive deck in the format. It's usually either Rakdos or Boros. This time I think it's Aggros. They're the max speed aggro. And so the reason I would say Boros is bad and Rakdos is good is because of what the deck wants to do. Boros wants to play vehicles, which by their nature are not an aggressive, thing to be doing. Whereas Rakdos wants to get max speed, which is literally exactly what an aggressive deck wants to be doing. So I think that's where you're going to see your split. Like, what does the deck want to do? Is it line up with how the deck is meant to be played? And in Rakdos' case, it does. You have your 2 mana 2/3 here. Start your engines. So 2 mana, you're automatically going to get to start your engines, which is really good. You want to start your engines early. And then when it ETBs, deal a damage and gain a life. So you actually, when you play this thing, you don't get just speed 1. You get speed 2 off rip, which is really good. And then once it has max speed, it has Death Touch and Haste. So this card's going to be amazing in multiples. If you play this on turn 2, you're at speed of 2. And on turn 3, you play it again, you're at speed of 3. You can attack for, whatever. And then turn 4, they both have Death Touch and Haste. You can sequence it however you want. But yeah, this card's going to be good. Really good. And then you have your vehicle. I don't like vehicles. So 4 mana 6/5. It does specifically combo with the other uncommon. So that's nice. You can tap it. So like this is a good kind of vehicle. Whereas like most vehicles, if they aren't creatures, they kind of suck. This one has an ability that it doesn't need to be a creature for. So you can give a creature lifelink and make it to where it can't be blocked. That's a really good ability in Limited, especially with your Gastel Thrill Seeker. Crewing it isn't as important here, I would say. Like the ability itself, it's probably not worth 4 mana, but it can help. And then your rare here is Noise. 4 mana 4/5. Start your engines. It deals the damage anytime you attack, so you're gonna get to max speed no matter what with this card. And then once you get to max speed, basically it ups your damage by 1 across the board. Card's insane. I'm going to die to this card and be mad about it several times in the set. For Enabler, I put in another 2 mana Start Your Engines card. I just think anything that's cheap that starts your engines is going to enable this deck to be good. It's a 3/1, so it's going to hopefully get through. And then it has max speed, tap for 2. That doesn't really matter, but maybe you have like a big top-end finisher that you want to play, so he could do that for you. Your payoff, 4 mana 3/4 with reach, also has Start Your Engines, but once it's at max speed. So once again, this deck should be hitting max speed every game, no matter what. Basically, you get to draw an extra card every turn. That's great because one big problem with aggressive decks is that you just run out of cards. You run out of stuff to do. If you haven't killed your opponent, then you just die. But this card lets you kind of refill as you go. This is going to be, it's going to be a real good card for this deck. And then one other notable card. This one's kind of a reach, I think. The Hour of Victory. 3 mana. Has Start Your Engines. Make a 2/2 zombie when it enters the battlefield. If you're at max speed, you can pay 2, sacrifice it, and go tutor up any card in your deck. Now, a lot of people will be like, wow, that's a really good ability. Go get tutor. Historically, in Limited, tutors suck, right? But I think this card could be good in Limited because of how easy it should be to get to max speed in this deck. I think this card has a chance of being like really good because it always goes and gets your best card in the deck, or always gets a thing you definitely need in this game. And the thing is, it comes with a body, so like you don't even feel that bad playing it. Like 3 mana 2/2 sucks, but if you get the tutor, then it's definitely worth it. So I don't know. I'm high on this idea. I'm excited to see a tutor that actually could be good and limited. We'll see. Golgari, black green. This is definitely, in my opinion, the least it's reliant on synergies deck. It's just play creatures and get them in the graveyard kind of thing. It's what we always see from Golgari. Kind of bored of it, but you have a vehicle here, 2 mana, black, green, so 6 mana for a 6/5 menace reach. Okay, that's fine, but remember it's a vehicle, so it doesn't actually do anything. All of that means nothing unless you have a 3-power creature on the battlefield. So take it with a grain of salt. When it ETBs, destroy target non-land permanent. That's really good. So it kills something when it enters the battlefield, and it has cycling. This is a fine card. It can help you, right? Because you can get rid of it if you don't need it. It can kill something. It could be a big creature if you have, the board set up for it. Yeah, but it's also just like kind of weird. Like, why is this Golgari? Why is this here? I don't really know. Whatever. Your Broodheart Engine is your more typical signpost. 2 mana, surveil 1 every turn, which is really nice. And then also 4 mana, sacrifice it, and then bring something back from the battlefield. So you're going to surveil things. Oh, look, I found my bomb. Put it in the graveyard. Pay 4 mana, bring it back. Maybe that bomb is Achik, Emerald Radiant. 6 mana, 3/3 that makes a ton of 1/1s, and then this card is disgusting. If you win and you played against this card, you probably did something wild. Yeah, I don't know, board wipe maybe. Yeah, this card is nasty. Everyone's going to be mad when that card gets played against them the first time. Every time, probably. Enabler here, 3 mana, 2/3. When it ETB is mill 3, so you're filling your graveyard and then getting lands. It just kind of draws you a card sometimes. It's like the most mill I could find on a single common, so that's why I put it here. For your payoff, this is a good payoff. I like this card a lot. 6 mana, 1 less to cast for each artifact or creature in your graveyard. And it has cycling. So it has this, ability to discard it, reanimate it possibly. It could be cheap. It's a big creature. I just think this is a good card to talk about. It's common, so don't expect anything like wild out of it, but a 2 mana, 3 mana, 5/4s is pretty good. And then you have your notable card here. This card's nasty. 4 mana, 2/2, but when it enters mill 2, and then put a counter on it for each artifact creature in your graveyard. So if you're doing what this deck wants, right? If you're filling up your graveyard, this thing could be 10/10 when it enters the battlefield. It could be pretty dang big. And also the art is hilariously awesome, like the hands as wheels. I like it a lot. I don't know. I don't think this deck's gonna be crazy or anything, but I just like some of the stuff it has. I like messing with the graveyard too. So, okay, our final archetype in limited, and this limited format is Gruul. So we're looking at Exhaust midrange, which is kind of I don't know, like it doesn't seem like a mid-range deck to me. It just seems like a big stompy, like you want to do all the ramp stuff that blue-green wants to do, and you want to exhaust. So like there's a lot of crossover between those two. But anyways, your Gruul uncommons, 2 mana, 3/2 vehicle. Whenever it attacks, make a treasure. That's a good. Exhaust for 3. This vehicle becomes a creature. Put a counter on it. So you can just turn this thing into a creature if you want permanently. But also crews for 1. So like the crew is not it's not that hard to hit. Any creature can crew this. It's a 3/2, becomes a 4/3. It's fine. Makes treasures so you can play your bigger stuff. Your other signpost, 3 mana, 3/3. Exhaust costs 2 less. Now that's really good. I mean, putting these two together, 1 mana, making your 3/2 vehicle a 4/3 creature is pretty sweet. And then 6 mana exhaust. Creatures and vehicles you control can trample and put 2 counters on this creature. So it's a pseudo like overrun kind of idea. You have to have big creatures for this thing to work, but I mean, hopefully you do. So that's kind of the idea of this deck, is play a bunch of big creatures, and then maybe Boom Scholar is like your game winner. Your rare here, this thing has a lot of text on it, man. 2 mana, 2/3 Vigilance. That's a good stat line. Tap it to add mana where X is its power, right? So if you can get this thing bigger, it taps for more mana, but it taps for 2 by itself, which is pretty sweet. Then exhaust for 12 mana. I mean, there's no reason to read that. If you do that in limited and it matters, then I guess good on you. But like having the 12 mana and then putting the things on the battlefield is cool. But like if you have 12 mana, you can probably just play the cards anyways. So whatever. Yeah, it has an ability. So cool. For your enabler for this deck, now this is not the best enabler, I will say. But I just wanted to highlight that this was in the set. 3 mana artifact. Taps for any color. It has max speed, and it can draw you cards later. So, like, this is typically not a great card you want to be playing, but I just threw it in here because I was like, well, I don't know what else you want to enable with this deck. Like, you could probably put all the same enablers in green that are in Simic on this thing. Any ramp creature or whatever. Payoff, I just wanted to highlight a common exhaust creature that I thought was cool. 1 mana, 1/1, but you pay 4 mana, make it a 2/2, and get a 3/3. So, Like, it's just making more bodies. This is going to be a good card, I think. Watch out for this one. Remember, Exhaust is at instant speed. So while this is over the board, right? Everything you can see visually, you may attack into this and just they pay 4 mana, make a 3/3, and kill your 2/2. So be careful of that. And then the other notable card, I wanted to put this in here. This one is definitely the reachiest of every other card, but at this point, I was just kind of throwing things. Honestly, I just wanted to talk about this card. I think it's fun. 4 mana, 2/4 with reach. When it ETBs, go look for any card or any creature with no abilities. There's a cycle of cards in the set that are all creatures that have no text, no abilities on them, and they're all huge. The black one is a 3 mana 7/2. The green one's a 5 mana 9/6 or something. I don't know. I just love that. And this guy goes and tutors them. That's fun. All right. Now, it has nothing to do with Gruul or Exhausting, but I don't care. I just wanted to talk about it. So, sue me. Okay. Now we're going to get to my rankings. Now, once again, I've never played with this set. And I've only read the cards like twice each. So, take all of this with a grain of salt. But I think, like, especially like the top 4, the middle, like the tiers, it's probably better as a tier list. Maybe I should do that. Because I think a tier list is more likely to be accurate rather than a ranking. But I'll just go ahead and walk through them. So Azorius I have at number 1. I think Azorius, what I've seen from it is it's just a very solid deck. There's good removal. There's good artifact stuff. There's different ones that give you 2 artifacts for 1 card. Like, you're just getting value across the board. And if you have the payoffs, then it's going to be a very solid deck every single time. Like, there's lots of decks that I think are going to be better, but are going to be harder to get. And Azorius isn't asking you to do anything, really. Whereas Rakdos is like, you have to get max speed. So if you get that terrible draw and you can't get max speed, well, your deck's going to suck. Whereas Azorius, you're not doing anything that, like, all your cards work by themselves. So I think that's why it's number 1. Moving down, I have Rakdos at number 2. Now, I said you have to get max speed. I do think this deck should get max speed pretty much every game if you've built your deck right. And aggressive decks and limited are good. And this, I think, will be the best aggressive deck because it's the most tilted towards that with the set mechanics. And I just think the payoffs are great. And the enablers are great. Like, it just seems like a solid deck across the board. And I the only reason I have it at number 2 is there's going to be that game. There's going to be that. This is going to happen. You're at Sealed, and you're cruising through your opponents, and you're going to hit a matchup against like a Dimir or something else, and they're going to kill your 2-drop, and you're going to flounder, and it's going to suck. So that's why I put it at number 2. Now, that can happen to a lot of decks, but I think like this one, it's going to hurt more when it happens here because you're going to be like, he just spent his 3 mana removal spell on my 2-drop, and it was the best play, So, yeah. Number 3, I have Selesnya, the green-white combo. This was the best deck in Outlaws. It's pretty much the same deck, and I think it looks even better in this set. So I'm putting it number 3. It probably could end up number 1 just because it's built around mounts rather than vehicles, whereas a lot of these decks have a lot of vehicles in them. I think this is just going to be a really, really good deck. Number 4, I have Izzet. This is a reach, honestly, but the draw and discard stuff looks like it's going to work. Izzet is always, it's always an archetype where I'm like, if this does work, it's going to be awesome, but usually it doesn't work. Outlaws, it was terrible. Bloomborough, it was terrible. I didn't play MH3 that much. What else was it? Karlov, Blue-Red was also pretty bad, I think. I can't remember. But here, it has so much support. If it doesn't work here, they just need to burn the house down and figure out something else to do with Izzet. So I'm hopeful. I love pirates. I love sharks. Let's go Izzet. Dimir, number 5. Now, obviously, you can see my blue tilt. I have 3 of the blue decks in the top 5. I'm hopeful that blue's good. We've seen blue like kind of just take a nosedive in limited recently. But I think Dimir is like definitely one of the more fun decks to build in this set because it's about setting up and building up this thing and then hitting your big stuff at the end. So and I think there's good control options this set. We have Spell Pierce, we have 2 mana, like we have a good 2 mana counterspell in this set. We have good removal. So I think this deck's gonna be good overall. And if the control stuff is better than I think it is, then this deck could definitely move up into the top 3, top 1 maybe. I don't know. Probably not top 1, but yeah. Number 6, we have Golgari. This one beats out the other lower decks just because I think it's like, even though the archetype itself isn't that like synergistic or anything, Golgari just has good removal and it has creatures that are good usually because it has green. So like it's usually a solid deck at the very least. And then if you get to do some of the archetype stuff, it's probably better. But yeah, like the archetype itself is kind of whatever. But I think Golgari is always just good. Moving down to Cruel, I don't trust Exhaust. It's like Gruul and Bloomburrow. Like it was all about expend, right? Gruul and its EX words is kind of interesting. That archetype was fine, but the expend stuff didn't really matter that much. It was just you play big creatures and kill your opponent's tokens or whatever. So once again, I just think this is like, it's going to be play some stuff and it's going to do things and you're going to be playing, I think, boring limited if you're playing this deck. Now, some people are going to be like, what? I like my big dinosaur. Sure, whatever. Enjoy that. I'm not going to enjoy it. So hopefully I don't have to draft this deck. Number 8, Orzhov. This thing, I talked about it when I talked about this deck. It just looks like there's too many directions happening. I don't know. I don't trust it because I've seen this kind of thing before where they try to do like 7 things with one deck and it's just too much to work on. Like it's like if the Dimir deck wanted to also add in enchantments, like enchantment synergies. It's like, well, then I have to like add enchantments to my artifact deck. And now my artifact stuff isn't as good. My enchantment stuff isn't as good. Like it's just, you're getting pulled in all these directions. So now if you can find inside of Orzhov, like the real nice synergy deck, then that's probably a lot better. But as of right now, there's too much to wade through, I think. So Orzhov at 8, Simic at 9. Simic, I don't trust it in limited. Like ramping and limited doesn't matter as much. This deck wants to ramp, so whatever. And then this is my wild hot take. Boros at number 10. In all likelihood, this deck is not that bad, but I don't trust vehicles, and building an aggressive deck that wants to play vehicles is not a good idea. So I'm putting it here. This is my called shot. We'll see if I'm right. I don't expect to be. I expect this to be probably one of the middle tier decks, just because it probably will be. It has red and white stuff, which is usually pretty good. So we'll see. But I'm really low on vehicles, and that's another reason why this set is just not inspiring me all that much. But yeah, those are my rankings. Once again, just have to remind you, this is not going to be correct. Actually, I should go back and look at my Bloomburrow rankings to see how they were. You know what? I'm going to toss that in at the end of the video. Whatever. I'm going to go look and see how my Bloomburrow rankings were compared to the end of set. The rest of this slideshow, I'm not going to like talk about everything. I just have combat tricks and instants. So this is really a resource for you. Basically, you're at your pre-release, you're at your draft night, and you want just a list of all the combat tricks and instants that someone could have. Pull this up, flick through it, say, oh, they have some red mana open. What could they have right now? What could kill me? Oh, they have a red and a blue. Well, it could be Lightning Strike. It could be Spectral Interference, right? So yeah, I like to have this kind of stuff when I'm playing, because it just helps me when I'm learning a set. So I just wanted to put it here for you. And as you'll see, look, there are not that many cards here. Like when I did Bloomburrow or Dustmorn or whatever, there was like 2 pages of white and a page and a half of blue. Like every color had a bunch of different ones in it, which is funny to me. Green has 7 and blue only has 6. That's so weird. But anyways, this is for you. And then the last thing I want to put in was some links to guides and reviews. So These are people I watch to get my draft information. Nikolai Bolas always puts out good draft info, and he also is one of the few people who does draft updates. So whenever people look at the draft stuff, they have their opinions, but once we play the set some, then we actually know what we're talking about. And he actually re-releases a video and says, here's what's new. Here's what's actually going on in the set. Paul Cheon, he's my favorite guy to watch play because he's so invested. He's so real. So go check out his YouTube channel. He's going to do, 30 drafts and put them all on YouTube. So watch those. Drafting Archetypes podcast with Sam Black. Sam Black, if you are a limited player who likes playing the bad decks, listen to his podcast. He knows how to do that. He's the best at doing that. Yeah. And then Jim Davis, he's my all-around favorite. He has good set reviews. He goes through constructed a lot, so he's going to talk about standard. He does limited, limited content. So those are my links. There's more. There's always more. But those are the 4 I like a lot. So that is it for our Aetherdrift. Now, I have to go look at Bloomborough. Now that I said that, I just really need to go see real quick what my rankings were like. Let's go see. Come on. Where are they at? Bloomborough rankings. Here we go. View. So, my Bloomborough rankings. Now, I played a ton of Bloomborough. Actually, it's probably the set I've played the most of. And I will say, I wish I would have played more Dustmorn. But Mice at number 1, that was close. Mice were definitely a better deck if you built it right, so that's fine. Rakdos number 2, probably just about right. Selesnya was definitely the best deck. I mean, I say definitely. I think it was pretty much the best deck. So that one probably was at number 1. Is it at 4 is actually terrible. Is it was definitely the worst deck in the set. Pretty much all the blue decks were, but look, hey, I got 3 blue decks in the bottom 5, so that was nice. Orzhov was a good deck, so I have that in the top 5. Definitely should be like top 3, I think. Simic was definitely the best blue deck, so it could have reached top 5, but it was definitely 5 or 6. I mean, Gruul wasn't that bad. Gruul wasn't number 9, and then, gosh, I put Golgari number 9. Golgari was definitely top 2 deck in the format. So I got 2 really, really wrong things. The other stuff I would say is generically correct. So, looking at all that, you can see kind of what to expect from Aetherdrift, my predictions there. But anyways, this has been Limited Archetypes live with you. If you enjoy the content, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you want to see. I want to do a draft update somewhere in the middle of this format, and I also want to maybe put out a draft. I don't know. I'm not a very good drafter, but I want to be a better drafter. So maybe I'll draft Aetherdrift on stream or something once or twice, see how that does. Also, for Bloomborough, I did a pre-release guide. Let me know if that was good, if you something you want to see. I don't know if I have time to make it because pre-release is going to be in 3 or 4 days. But yeah, this has been Limited Archetypes. My name is Hunter, and